Okay, this is the Scenario Radio Show bonus content. If you've been listening to our show lately, then you likely have heard After the Love Is Gone, where we did an entire show discussing divorce and what happens after the divorce when people are trying to manage their way through it in some kind of healthy way. We talked with Joel Kibble. We talked with several different people, couples, people who have been through various stages, and they talked about it in some healthy ways. Today, we have a certified life coach and a licensed professional counselor. Both of them are in the business of working with people, men and women, particularly when they are on the other side of a divorce, divorcees, trying to help them manage it. As we've talked about on the show, it's a difficult thing. It can be a challenge, and nobody should have to deal with it alone. And that's what we've got today is people who help people to not have to deal with it alone. So we've got Coach Michelle, certified life coach, and James Bush, friend of the show and licensed professional counselor. How are both of you doing?
Doing good. Thank you.
All
Thanks for
right.
having me on.
All right. I'm glad to have both of you here. Okay. So as I have been mentioning before, I realize that divorce can be traumatic. I mean, it's something that can have a tremendous amount of impact on a person and their life, and oftentimes people don't really have a map. Is one of the things we when we were doing the show where that we realized a lot of people the only thing that they have as far as any kind of guidance about divorce is what they saw their parents do or what they saw their parents go through. And even those things, it's a lot of weight on their back about, well, I don't want to do it the way they did it and I don't want to fail or mess it up. The way they may have done it, or they were perfect. So I want to be like that. And both of those can be, unrealistic expectations. What are the expectations that you lay out first and foremost for people, or try to help guide people toward when you see them dealing with when they first are at the beginning of dealing with divorce? What kind of expectations do they need to have, or what are some of the worst expectations, the faulty expectations that you try to relieve people of, or where this type of thing is concerned? Michelle, what about you?
I feel like people expect to one of the things I try to make people expect is to know that you're going to be sad. Like divorce to me is a tiny death, and you have to accept that you are going to go through a difficult grieving process. It's like you're really losing a major part or a significant chunk of time in your life is disappearing. Your partner, your person that you've been with for a while, and I think as long as you know that you're going to grieve, then we can already like start to move forward through it.
All right, James, what about you? What was something that you try to make sure people are aware of?
Well, for a lot of people, divorce can be similar to a Tyson two-piece. When you just get hit and you're reeling, you're reaming. I mean, you're around the ring, you don't have your balance, there's no stabilization. So that's where people like myself, people like Michelle, we come in to try to help stabilize you in that moment and give you a clear perspective of what's to come and help you get through that path because it has its different periods of time that you're hearing a lot of stuff from your family, your friends, member, don't do this, do that. You're hearing some things potentially from your attorneys, you're hearing things and going on from your children. All this stuff is happening in real time. And so one of the things that I think that as clinicians and coaches, what we offer is to help settle down, because unless that we have some type of clear direction of where to go or someone to help support us through that moment, then we can begin to make these lasting decisions, i.e., parenting plans, i.e., MDAs that
Mm.
will affect us for quite a significant amount of time. And when that does happen, that can hurt you 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, which makes the recovery from the divorce even more daunting.
Yeah. One of the things that Coach Michelle mentioned was the idea of grieving. She mentioned she referred to it as a tiny death. I always think of it as the death of the death of a thing that was alive. This relationship, it was its own living entity, and it's no longer there. The only difference, what probably makes it worse in some cases, is that the people who were involved are still alive. It's not, you don't have to go to a graveyard to see this thing that was once dead. You still have to, in some cases, still see these people, and it seems to make people make a lot of. I'm as a middle aged man, and I know various people who have been divorced. I've seen people make some very questionable decisions in the midst of their grief. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So what is it? What is one of the things that you would recommend as far as, because I know we always tell people we don't want to tell them how to grieve, but you can make some decisions that can be really detrimental. What's one of the most detrimental decisions a person can make in the midst of their grief around a divorce, in your experiences?
I've run into a lot of people who just immediately rush to um make decisions about their children, and most are like just the little things like where they're going to divide assets and things like that. It gets really messy, and that's the one where I'm like, you have to like slow down and like really think about this. Like, don't just rush into that, because like you said, for 3 4 years down the line, or even within the next 6 months, especially if you have kids involved, like that can get really messy.
Hmm. And what about you, James?
So some of the things that I've seen would be, and this is on a case by case situation or scenario.
Yeah.
One would be sometimes people rush into new relationships. Matter of fact,
Yeah.
before the ink is dry or has actually been put pen to pad on the first MDA, marital dissolution agreement, they are already in another relationship where they're in a honeymoon stage and they're having all these different emotions and feelings. And they're thinking, okay, this person is going to be a whole lot better than the person that I am about to leave right now, which
Hmm.
I don't know about that one. Then we're talking about also financially. You're going out possibly buying property. You're going out there and making these huge purchases when you don't know what your normalcy or your reality will be going forward. You don't know how
Hmm.
much money. You don't know where the kids will be not stationed at, where they will reside. None of that has been solidified because the paperwork from the courts has not stated it as of yet. And so a lot of times there's this rush, this willing to maybe try to control what you cannot control in that moment. And
Uh-huh.
unfortunately for men,
Mm-hmm.
that's a powerless feeling, and we don't like that because of
Mm,
family law practices.
Hmm. So
those facts.
speaking to that, men and the idea of powerlessness, do you think, is that what motivates a lot of it, that they want to have something that they can say that they have this control over, or that they want to, for instance, when a lot of times, and I've seen this again as a middle-aged man,
Mhm.
knowing people who've gotten divorced, them immediately jumping into a new relationship. What is it that they're trying to regain some sense of power, or do they feel that they want to be reassured that they're able to be loved or to love? What is it that leads someone down that path to say, no, I need to be in this new relationship right now? As a man, at least, what do you find that to be,
I think
James?
one of the big things is depending on how the relationship ended. And
Hmm.
we know that, I mean, from some statistics, 70-80% of divorces are initiated by women, and that's even higher with higher degrees. But some men still long for that level of companionship. And so it's one of those things about, okay, she left, she's gone, but I got somebody else. It's somewhat of left a blow to the ego. It's a blow to the pride of,
Hmm.
this just happened, but guess what? I can bounce back from this. I'm going to be all right. And unfortunately, uh, in this day and age, and it's getting better, but we're being taught how to sit with our feelings even more. To say it's
Uh-huh.
okay to not be okay. It's okay to say, you know what, this is
Hmm.
sucks. This is just jacked up, and I'm in a space right now where I just got a haymaker thrown at me, and I don't know what to do. I need, I need a standing 10 count because of what has just happened. But if I try to rush it and get back up too quickly, such as a relationship, even though it may from the outward appearances, you have your people on the outside saying, oh man, you see how he bounced back, man, he all good, he great. And
Uh-huh.
people that are
Hmm.
uninformed who do not know your situation or your circumstances will make those type of comments, and it will punish, well, it will not punish you, but it will be detrimental to only you because they will not have to suffer the consequences of those actions.
A lot of people say that, I often get the impression people feel that women sit in their feelings better than men. Based on your experiences, Michelle, Coach Michelle, is that true, or is it really that they just process it differently, but they still have some of the same difficulties?
I think they still have some of the same difficulties. As far as like jumping into dating for sure, like it's definitely a thing, but I think women they're a lot less likely to run into like another immediate relationship because there is like it's case by case basis, but a lot of women that I work with for sure brood for a minute. There's
Hmm.
like a real grieving process that's a lot of brooding, a lot of self-loathing, like, you know, self-esteem is kind of like not on par. So that's why I'm always telling them like dating is not the best thing because if you're not going into it healthily, like you're going to attract the wrong person towards you. But women tend to sit in their emotion a little bit longer. Like I find myself more having to bring them out of that than to talk to them about dating.
Huh, huh. That's interesting. So there's either way, whether it be men who rush into something new or women who sit in the same space for too long, both can be detrimental if they're not in the right type of frame of mind.
I
Exactly.
definitely agree.
Exactly.
Definitely
Huh.
agree.
Both.
It's not a cookie cutter model on that one.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and
Exactly.
that's another weird thing for me about even asking questions about it is like I recognize that there is no one size fits all for any of this. And I know that
Mhm.
both of you, when you're dealing with it, you have to kind of try to manage that and figure it out as you go sometimes with some of the people that you may be working with. Um do you find when we think about what went wrong, because obviously people think about what went wrong, do you find that either one group or the other, men or women, place more blame on themselves more than the other, or does one place more blame on the other party more than the other, and or is that just really a case by case thing as well?
It is a case by case thing, but I think women sit with it longer and like trying to figure out like where things in the disconnect like happening, especially because I deal with a lot of clients who have been cheated on. So you won't
Hmm.
say it's easy to place the blame, but a lot of the times they try to trace back to figure out like why didn't I see this? When did we start to disconnect? And they're trying to figure out what went wrong in the relationship. That's what I have a lot of clients go through.
So they're not as concerned about the who, just the what, whether that
Yeah.
whoever it is. Okay.
Yeah.
How does that look from the men's perspective most of the time for you, James?
From the men's perspective, what I try to do is we try to go back to when the relationship first developed. But at the same time, I would tell them that, hey, look, this wasn't something of your divorce that started when you met her. This started in childhood. This started in
Hmm.
development. This started by some of the comments and the questions or the lack of a father, lack of a mother, lack of empathy, your attachment style, and everything that went along with that. So
Hmm.
that's what I try to get them to understand is that there's a whole body of work that needs to be done. Well, actually, not body of work, but there's a lot of circumstances that has led to the place that you are in today. And there's a circumstances that led to making that choice to say I do to that person or so. And the ability for them to own it, take ownership, be accountable, and be responsible for that is tremendous because now feel empowered where they felt like something had landed upon them.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point of view too.
So a lot of it becomes a thing more. I mean, although the relationship is the beginning, the impetus for the whole thing, a lot of it becomes more about them learning more about themselves in a more
Yes.
holistic way, I guess.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
Definitely.
otherwise you can't fix the relationship. The relationship is gone. But if all you focus on is the relationship, you're not really fixing anything.
What I would say is that you can just switch partners. You know, you can divorce one person, then marry the same type of person, and you're still
Hmm.
doing the same thing. A lot of
Hmm.
times it's on us. That's what some things that what I try to propose in moving on in healing is that we've got to uncover what we've done. You know, what weren't we doing? Who are we? who are we not in those spaces? And when we're able to do that, then we're starting to look at, okay, you know what, this does not make sense. It's like, okay, Van, I'm not going to judge anybody because some people may be a little bit obese or anything like that. But if you want to have a healthy diet, eating cake every day is not going to be the way to get it. There are certain facts. And again, this is no red pill or any other kind of black pill, blue pill, pink, whatever kind of pill you want to. There are certain things that have to be done to support wellness, to support healing, to support, a favorable outcome in the end. If we're not doing these things, you're not going to see the results that you want to see. That's just what we go and we do treatment plans. We have goals, but we have a plan that is linking to the goal that we desire.
So do either of you ever find yourself having to explain the perspective of the person who's not there? Is that a healthy thing to do? I don't know. So for instance, I know for instance, Coach Michelle, working with women regularly, there are things that you get a better understanding of about them as women, and even of course being a woman yourself, but still there's things that you get an understanding about. But I would assume that on some level, working with women who have been getting divorced from men, that there's some insight that it gives you about those interactions with men that maybe somebody who's only going through that one divorce doesn't see. So does that ever come up? Do you ever find yourself saying, well, here's something that you may not be considering about the way that men approach these things typically? Not saying that all men approach things, but or is that something you try to kind of stay away from and just try to stick to, well, this is your thing?
I try to not bring in any other perspectives because in my coaching, because I'm not a counselor and I'm not a therapist, so I don't want to introduce concepts to people that may be too much for them. So I definitely stay on a listening level and I work with them on their particular situation.
Okay. So James, you are a therapist. Do you ever be like, chicks, man?
Well, come on, Van. Don't put me out there like I done did it and said it like that, bro. What are you trying to do now?
I'm just messing with you, man.
What I will say is that biologically and psychologically, men and women and we're wired differently. And so what I try to do is I try to take into account that, hey, the expectations that you have sometimes for your partnerships may not actually be there because you are a guy and she is a lady. And she has different ideas about how she sees the world that are different than you. So sometimes you went in there and you are looking at it from a perspective of, well, she should do it no. She doesn't think like you. She doesn't rationalize like you. I'm not going to go out there and say that she's super emotional or that she's no, I'm not going to go out there and say that, but there's a different way of life and a different sometimes culture that she has come up in that has that has prepared her for the meeting that she has with you at that point in time. And so if we didn't take enough time in the data collection period, which is called dating, to kind of understand these things about her, then we will have these different challenges and struggles. And what you see is what you see. What you see is what you get. And so those are some of the things that I try to have to describe to brothers when it comes to the opposite sex and the potential of maybe let's look at it a little bit differently because we are different. I think that's something that needs to be stated from the rooftops. We are different. We are not the same.
Yes.
So do y'all find, being that you're working in this space, and I don't know on what level, how many black men, black women either of you work with. Obviously, with my show, that's the central focus. We always center black, black people generally. But with a lot of the public discourse that happens these days, where black men and black women are concerned in relationships, and what we see in social media and just media in general, the public discourse, a lot of times it's fraught. It's a lot of tension and a lot of conflict, and people seem to have difficulty talking about those relationships in ways that are healthy. What do you feel that we're moving in a better direction now that there are more people going to counseling, more people getting coaching, more people doing those things? And if so, what can we do to create a better dialogue that foster a better dialogue, I guess, publicly? And I know it's a pretty broad question for people who are working with people on a one-on-one basis, but I'm just interested in both of your thoughts. Coach Michelle?
I think I really try to encourage women, even outside of coaching, to take some time getting to know yourself. Because when I got married, all I said was I wanted to be married. Like, I'm a master manifester, so I'm like, I want to be married by 30. I didn't specify anything about my partner that I was like qualities or interests that I needed that would nurture me and for us to move forward in life, because I didn't know anything about me. So, like, I took time to myself at certain points in my life to stop dating and spend time with myself, but I hadn't done nearly as much up to that point. I just knew that by society standards, I wanted to be married. Like, and that was it. And I tried to encourage women to spend time with yourself, date yourself, take yourself on vacations, figure out things that you like to do, and have a strong sense of self before you try to have another partner. So that way, like, your boundaries are up, the things that you need, you can communicate, you know, your communication style, you know, your attachment style, like James said, like, and you've been working on yourself. And I think the more women and men take time to do that versus just rushing into relationships, that we could fare better.
What are your thoughts, James? I
I,
see you cheesing.
I'm gonna push back on Michelle just a little
Okay.
bit. Just
What's
a little
that?
bit. I'm all for taking time for yourself. I mean, I have I work with males as well as females, and one of the things that I kind of tease at, I was like, okay, you read that Oprah book and Ayala Van Zant book, and you sat in the corner of your home, and you was able to recite the different pages. And in the meantime, you were able to learn from those practices and everything she said. But what I would give and I offer is that, and I've seen it from in my sessions, is that Pookie, Ray Ray, and Man Man didn't read that same book. And so
Mhm.
it's about game speed. It's about, yes, you've learned. It's like a kid that's going on a basketball court by himself and he's shooting hoops by himself. So guess what? He knows how to do a lot of things by himself. But when he's at full game speed or so, the game is different. It's faster.
Mhm.
It's a lot of things and nuances that you got to get your head around, because if you don't, then man, you can lose sight of a lot of things. So what I think is I want looking at a balance in that process. It's that, okay, read, study, know yourself. But guess what? When you are tested and challenged, because even in the book, in the meantime, like Ayala Van Zant says, she said, your love for yourself will stand trial. And so even when you are tested in those moments, you will have to give a response. And sometimes the response is not quick enough, and you can fall down that same negative pattern and pathway that you led you to the first hurt.
So, do you think that's a matter of emotional intelligence, and that because what I'm thinking about is culturally, we don't encourage, and we are just now getting to a place where we even think to encourage men to have any sort of emotional intelligence. It's just not. It's not something that's been a long-standing tradition. Do you think that? Because you got to be in the game to actually know whether any of the things you've been learning it worked.
It worked. Right.
Do you think that is a lot of that has to do with just that men have a further ways to go culturally, not that they're not capable culturally of exercising emotional intelligence?
I think so. I truly think so. Sometimes that comes with doing that a self study and understanding what is it that makes you you. What are some of the things that bother you? What is self love to you? Is it self awareness? Is it self promotion? Is it promoting the ideas that help you get to the goals that you ultimately would like to see in life? Okay, cool. So guess what? Now that I know the goals and now I have a level of self awareness about myself, what is it that will keep me from there? What are some of the distractions? Who are the type of distractions that will keep me from getting to that place? And I think that is so important, because for as you said, Van, from a far long period of time, it was just, man, she looks good. Man, she's got a great body. Let me go and holler at her. But wait a minute. What about, because we know that a lot of times within these divorces, okay, man, you had happens in maybe in your 30s. And so then you're knocking on that 40 door, and life is starting to get a little, you got maybe not so many years ahead of you as you have behind you in that point. So you're thinking about retirement. You've got children. You've got all these other kind of, real life, I guess I want to say grown up responsibilities. Can
Yeah.
this individual that I have around me help me as I am being who I am get to the place that I want? Because right now I'm hustling. I'm out there working 15 hours a day, maybe 2 jobs, so I can put back what I've lost. Men are becoming more cognizant of that in these days.
Is there anything, Coach Michelle, about living, loving, and operating in womanhood in this day and age that women have to reevaluate, or that you have found that women have to reevaluate when you're talking to them? That the same way that I think a lot of times there are men who haven't really considered their own emotional intelligence, that they have to consider it moving forward. Is there anything that's equivalent to that, did you think, for women?
I don't know. Rephrase that. Like
Um,
trying to catch on.
Okay, I'm of the belief. I'll give you an example. I am of the belief
Okay.
that a lot of times when I hear people talk about relationships, and because we do the show, and oftentimes we may have shows about relationships, or even when I hear people in conversation, people often refer to, why don't people do this anymore? Or why aren't relationships like this anymore? And the thing that I think that they keep missing is that none of that exists anymore, because it was of its era, but it doesn't apply to you now. The things that people keep trying to go back to, they can't go back to, and they shouldn't go back to be perfectly honest. We have to relearn this. The generation now learning how to manage love and relationships are learning it for the first time. The people, nobody before them, my grandfather didn't. Not only did my grandfather not understand the concept of emotional intelligence, there wasn't a lot of space for him to learn it. He was too busy trying to, he had several jobs. He was trying to keep his white folks from killing him. He was, so it's just this entire life, 10 children and all this. But this generation is the first generation who have the space to really even consider, what am I doing? What do I need to be doing differently than my mother and my father did it? Because they did the best that they could do, but that doesn't really apply to me now. I guess that's what I'm asking about. What is it that, when you think of women, what is it that's like, okay, but no, this is a different situation than what the previous generations dealt with?
I think for me, like speaking for women, I think the biggest thing is to know when to let go, because women that I know like will continue to try to make things work that just do not work, and like
Yeah.
keep trying to like make this man fit into something that's good for them, and it's just not, and they'll keep holding and holding on to these relationships until they dog themselves out. And that's
Mhm.
what I see a lot. Like a lot of friends, even myself trying to hold on, and some of my clients, I'm just like, the relationship, it was not working for a long time, and you were trying to like keep up with it. And that's what I see a lot of. Like,
Mhm.
I'll stay down forever for somebody, and it's like, why? Like that's what I see a lot of, where I'm just
Mhm.
like, it's a generation lost on like, I'm gonna stay down, I'm ride or die for somebody that's not worth it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just to clarify, I don't want either of you to think that I'm asking you to speak for men and women in their entirety. I'm not. I don't, when I ask, I'm definitely not asking. Coach Michelle, as a
Yeah.
representative of all women, would you please? I
All of
don't really
us.
mean it like that.
I know, I know,
Uh,
I know.
yeah. Okay. So is there any before we get ready to wrap things up? Is there anything that either of you think of that you wish that I'm going to, let's do it this way. Is there anything that you wish more men understood? And I'm going to ask Coach Michelle that first, and then I want to ask you the same thing about, is there anything you wish more women understood?
Mhm.
And then I'll go to James and ask the same thing. So, Coach Michelle,
What more women understood.
just generally, as far as love and relationships and divorce, and getting through divorce, go on the other end, is there something that you wish more men understood about it? And then is there something that you wish more women understood about it?
I definitely wish more men understood that like the ending of it is going to be hard for the woman too, because I find that like men uh, are kind of like, she's over it, she has somebody else, she's moving on, like it's old news to me, like she's cutting me out, when it's really like I feel like I'm at my wits end with it. I've tried everything I could, and I'm actually really devastated from this.
Mhm.
Like I'm not happy. Like this is not something that I wanted to do. And I've seen from experience that men think it's like really easy for the woman to like move on, meet somebody else, go out, date, like all of that. It is like, no, like that's not the reality of it at all.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is it that you wish women knew more? That w-
I wish women knew that, even though like it's a hard time right now, that like really it's, even though it's an ending, like it's really a beautiful new beginning. And it's gonna take like a whole lot of like figuring out like who you really are, what you have inside of you to like get through this situation, this ending. And I want them to know that, like, without sounding super cliche, that there are better days like on the other
Mhm.
side of this. Yeah.
Okay. James
Mhm.
Bush,
Yes, sir.
same question. What
Okay.
is it that you wish? What is it that you wish women understood more, and what is it that you wish men understood more when it comes to being on the end of a relationship and in the midst of divorce or after divorce?
Well, one of the things that I wish for women to understand is that there are better days ahead. And just because something happened to you, that doesn't mean that it is the end. That doesn't mean, sometimes it could be a blessing, can be in the rejection. And so sometimes what I will tell them is that, hey, that you have an opportunity now to create and path the life that you've always desired to do. So is that we're not looking at the little Pollyanna of the positive Patty role, but what we're saying is that you have a chance to go out there and do those things and be the example, if you have children, to your children, that you are a survivor, that you are an overcomer, that you can do great. Because sometimes they'll look at their circumstances and say, well, this has happened and this has happened and this has happened. I've lost my fire and I've lost so much of myself. I invested. He still do that. He still did what he did in the end. But what I would go out and say is that you have a great opportunity in this moment to revisit yourself, remake yourself, guarding against those points of insecurity, guarding
Hmm.
against those points of low self-esteem, low self-worth, and things on those lines is so important, because that can affect the trajectory that you have going forward when you do potentially go out and date someone else. Now, as for my men, what I would say is, do not try to do this by yourself. This is heavy lifting. A lot of brothers think that they can go out there and just say, I'm all right. I can. No, 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 no. We've got to go and revisit some things. We got to work on ourselves. We got to get in purpose. We got to follow our purpose, because what happens is sometimes we can sit and look at a lot of these social media memes and these social media shows and things like that, and we can use that as our therapy of, okay, that applies to me. No, no, no. You need something that is tailored specifically to you. You need someone that you can tell them the truth and they can give you back the honest truth about you. And
Yeah.
I think that's so important, because why? Because now we go from being a I don't want to curse on your show, but we go from being the guy that just runs around a whole lot to somebody that is intentional about where we're going.
Uh
And
huh.
when you are intentional, then you have the opportunity to lead others, and you won't make some of the same mistakes that you made in your previous relationship.
Yeah.
That's great
Okay.
advice. Yeah.
Yeah. Both of you, I really appreciate y'all taking the time and sharing these thoughts and everything. If someone is interested in getting your services and learning more about what it is you do, let's make sure that they know how to reach out to each of you. Coach Michelle, how do people find out more about what you do?
You can go to my website. It's newvibecoaching.com, as well as my Instagram is Real Talk with Michelle. And I'm Real Talk with Michelle on Facebook as well.
Okay. James Bush, what about you, man?
You can find me, the Mind of a Man Show, on Instagram. You can find me, Mind of a Man Podcast. That's on what's that? Facebook, Twitter, Mind of a Man. Also, too, James at bushcounselingservices.com. Drop me an email, bushcounselingservices.com. You can go check out my website. Also, I'm a shameless plug. December the 2nd, Huntsville, Alabama. We will be having Let's Have Manversation, our first conference that we are so excited. A group of men getting together to talk, to share, and discuss things along these lines, so that they can learn from the past and not live there.
All right.
I love that. Yes.
Sounds good. Sounds good. All right. Well, I appreciate you both for joining us. Make sure to check with us on the scenarioradioshow.com. You can find out, you can check out this, check out our past shows that we've had on love and relationships. As you know, we are Black love advocates in everything that we do. So make sure to like, click, and subscribe.
This is the Scenario Radio Show. Real talk with a playlist.
That's the scenario.